welcome back to D&D Beyond. I am Amy Dallen, and today I had to call up our friend Saige Ryan because today is a shopping episode. But it's not just any shopping episode. Today is a Druid shopping episode. So, of course, I had to be like, hey, what you doing Thursday? Saige, thank you. Welcome back to the stream. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me, and thank you for always calling me to gush about druids, because I feel like my friends are sick of hearing me talk about druids. So this is the place that I get to yell about it, and honestly, that's a gift. Thank you, Amy.
Speaking of gifts, some things that you might want to throw to your party or be on the lookout for yourself if you're playing a druid is the subject of today's stream, inspired by the wonderful article that is in a window that I'm popping up as we speak. Ha ha ha, multi-monitors. Mike Bernier wrote us a wonderful article for the website on the best magic items for druids, and I love it. It's just a top 10 list, 10-ish, there's some cheating involved, of things that would really might help your druid, might fit your theme, might make your game fun and exciting, or make good treasure to hand to the druid in your own party. So I wanted to start by asking Saige, what do you look for as a druid when you're like, I want the sweet loot, I hope it's this?
I hope it's this. Okay, so depending on what level you're starting out at, of course, druids were squishy babies most of the time. So I loved that this article really catered to that really well. I feel like you start off and you've got your like basics. You've got your amulet of health, you've got shields, you've got cloak of protections and ring of protection. Those are definitely some of the things where I'm assessing the DM and how mean they're going to be to me. And if I think that they're going to be mean at all, I'm taking one of those off the bat. I'm hoping there is something that will make me survive the first encounter, basically, from very far away. Especially, God, if you're starting at like level 1 and you can't even wild shape yet, you're just like, I don't know, I'm basically just a kind of mediocre sorcerer. I'll be over here.
I love that very much. So these first 3 items on the list are the Amulet of Health, the Animated Shield, which will sort of just go around you. So once you can wild shape, you can still have that thing going pretty easily. And then either a Cloak or Ring of Protection to just kind of get some buffing going. And I love imagining the challenges of item transformation. As referenced at the top here, where Mike goes over some of the rules for wild shape magic item usage, because you can't cast spells, of course, most of the time when you're wild shaped. And in theory, you have to answer the question of whether you can wear this in your transformed shape, and that's just the best question.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that go?
It?
Yeah, what are some examples of, like, have you ever had a like, and then I was a bear and I was wearing this beautiful hat, and that's how that went?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I love the idea of like a ring of protection and being like, I hook it on my ear when I'm a rat. I wrap my tail around it, protected, fight me about it. I love the idea of things like that. I find that when I'm building a druid, I like to have something that is like, you would recognize me in my wild shape, because it's a little off in some capacity. That's like one of my favorite druids, she's a pink tiefling. So like there's always a little bit of flair of like pink of something or one of her items or something that's on her in her wild shape, so that the party could recognize if she does just happen to be a bear at the moment and they didn't see it happen. And maybe that's your ring. Maybe that's your ring of protection that's just like hooked on your ear at that point.
I love that. And you should, of course, always check with your DM, because there are both rules that allow a lot of flexibility and some limitations for who can use what items in what form. So there's sort of specifically if you have a tail, probably can't wear boots, but there's a lot of latitude that's within these, and it specifies that magic items are into being magical for you, so they will generally adjust to fit creatures. So that's, I feel like, as all the leeway you and your DM need to figure out what makes sense and is fun for your game.
Yeah, my go-to is, if you can explain to me exactly how it would work, I'll usually let it slide. If you can really justify, like, okay, you're wearing boots? Okay. How? What do they look like and how did you get them on? a
Have you
lot
ever had
aside,
like a
personally.
particularly memorable, like, is there one without putting on blast any of your players, was there either like a request that you were like, I'm sorry, that just can't happen, or one that you were like, that's genius, that's absolutely canon now?
You know, I'll put myself on blast instead. I in a game with Vince Casso, we love Vince. Vince, the GM of Failed Save, in our home game. I was trying to justify being able to do something as a shark. Specifically, I had jumped off of a boat, and he had implied that there was something in the ocean that he didn't want us to get, and of course, I wanted to. I said, "All right, I'm treasure diving," and he's like, "How are you going to get it up to the top? How are you going to pick it up?" And I was like, "Well, if I can cast, I can't cast. Can I put it in my teeth?" And he's like, "You're going to put it in your teeth." And I'm like, "I'm going to put the entire treasure chest in my teeth." And that was one that I was punished for greatly. The item was a mimic. The chest was a mimic, and I put it in my teeth, and I suffered deservingly for it. Uh,
An absolutely classic. Are you sure you want to do that moment?
and I said, "Absolutely."
You know, worth the risk. Live
Yeah,
dangerously. Bite
find
things on
out.
the bottom of the ocean floor. Who knows?
Exactly.
So, there are many more great things on this list. Did you have a
Mhm.
favorite from this list?
Absolutely. 100%. I think that there's a lot of very functional ones in here that were really interesting. But the one that stood out to me was the Staff of the Woodlands. I think the Staff of the
Ah.
Woodlands is such a cool magical item. Depending on like the kind of druid you're playing, there was one thing about it that was so cool to me. And as an action, you can turn the staff into a tree and use it to cover for yourself in combat or climb its branches to take a place. You could climb it to get a high ground. You could hide behind it. And I love the idea of just being like, no, absolutely not. And hiding behind your staff. That's awesome.
I love that the same thing jumped out at me as like sort of clearly the most fun. Not only does the staff give you bonuses to attack, damage rolls, spell attack rolls, comes with charges for staple druid spells, as it says, and unlimited free pass without trace. Which I love because that is thematically sort of the opposite of like you'll never know we were here. Just kidding, 60-foot tall tree. Which also
Exactly.
could be deployed for all kinds of chaos purposes in any space where there shouldn't be a 60-foot tree. Like if you're just like F this building in particular, uh
Yeah.
staff
I'm
of the
trying to get out
woodlands.
of here. Boom. Tree through the ceiling. I'm climbing up. I'm out. Goodbye. That
I
sounds
have never had
excellent.
one
I
of these
love
in game, but it seems amazing and now I want one.
I actually haven't either. I've seen it before and it's one of those things that I'm like, maybe the next one. There's always a next druid to build.
Of course it
I think
is
that would be
rare,
fun.
most of these items on this list are available in the basic rules. A few of them are specifically from the Dungeon Master's Guide or another source. It's marked in here. You can pick them up, just so you know, if you're reading this article or watching this video and you go on D&D Beyond, if one of these items is from a source that you don't have in your collection yet, you can grab items from these sources individually on the marketplace. So there are some ways to get access to that, but most of these are in the basic rules or available in that form. And let's see. I should shout out the names of the ones we've already talked about just more specifically. So,
Mhm.
that Amulet of Health gives you a constitution score of 19. So that's going to be just an instant. I'm a little hardier than I was before. Um, it'll help you with maintaining concentration. Um, the animated shield we already talked about gives you a +2 AC like most shields, but you don't need to be holding it, which is very helpful. It just circles around you. The cloak of protection or ring of protection give you the a +1 to AC and saving throws. So just a general across the board. This is helpful. Um, and the staff we just mentioned has a lot going for it, but that specific bonus is a +2 on the attack and damage rolls and a +2 on the spell attack rolls, in addition to the spell charges and the I'm a tree now action, which is just fabulous.
I love that it had Awaken. Awaken is such a fun spell that I feel like I never really see utilized, but the idea of just being like, "Hold on, I got this. I'll ask the tree." And just being able to like animate something, it gives it an intelligence score of 10. and being able to like ask the surroundings when you're looking for something, or just cause absolute chaos by giving life to inanimate plants.
Very, very fun. And I think I told this story just recently, but I in the one shot I recently ran, I just sort of made up my own reasons that somebody might have managed to procure the services of someone to help them out and set up some awakened trees. And I was like, this should be really interesting because a bunch of the people in my party, and I had chosen this before. I wasn't specifically trying to defeat them, but I was looking around and I was like, oh, that's interesting. A bunch of them have speak with animals, but no one is specifically going to have this, except Jen Kretschmer played a Firbolg who has speech of beast and leaf.
Oh,
So it was amazing
nice.
because at a crucial moment, she was just like, I'm just going to have a little talk with the awakened trees and we're going to settle this whole thing. And it became just my favorite memory. So yeah, awakening
That's
things that you can
fantastic.
potentially then talk to and have little intelligence 10 conversations with. Hmm? The staff has more functions. It has new friends functions. I just like that. Hmm?
I love it.
I will say something I've never used from this list, but I thought was a very cool inclusion was number 5, the insignia of claws from the Horde of the Dragon Queen. Obviously, folks will be familiar with the challenges of the fact that a lot of times when you're in a fight, you'll get that key DM narration that it's like that just doesn't seem to be hitting quite as hard as it should, which is
Yeah.
oftentimes your resistant to non-magical damage warning. And ways to
Yep.
get around that or compensate for that can be super helpful. So the insignia of claws gives you a +1 bonus to attack rolls and damage rolls with natural weapons, among other with unarmed strikes and natural weapons. But the relevant part
Mhm.
for being wild shaped is natural weapons. And the attacks are considered to be magical, which, as Mike notes, the circle of the moon druids get that at 6th level. But if you're not one, or you're not 6th yet, this is going to be very relevant. And you just have to attach that insignia to something, so not so much worried about whether you can wear a fancy hat in your wild shape form. And I thought was one that jumped out at me as a very cool fix, especially because I would imagine between you and your DM, you could also decide exactly what the insignia of claws looks like, and then you've got a cool little superhero logo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. It's like your like big S on your chest. I love that. That's a very cool idea. I like the idea of making it magical. Personally, I almost never play a Circle of the Moon Druid too. And it's like, if we're thinking Circle of the Moon, they don't need anything. Circle of the Moon Druids are set. Like once you hit level 2 in Circle of the Moon, they're so overpowered in an incredible way. Like if you're playing to win, you're doing it. But I'm never playing to win. I am playing to win 0% of the time. So I'm almost never a Circle of the Moon Druid. So having something like that would be really, really helpful, because I very much build for fun and backstory and RP first and functionality second. So I think a lot of the time I'll then go through and be like, okay, what magical item then can make this survive? Uh, I built a nonsense character and everyone's going to be mad at me. What will make this actually helpful?
Well, and I love we talk a lot here on the channel and hopefully always will about the fact that there are a lot of ways to approach these builds and the right one is the one that's right for you and your group and your table and this particular game. So there I I love hearing folks different versions of like I start with this and then I patch it using this, or I don't care about this at all
Yeah.
and I care about this a great deal, because the truth is that all of those versions can work. But I love that, like, if there are other folks who specifically love, just like you and me, often want to build like the thing that sounds fun, but if you are also looking for ways to make sure, like, all right, but I also want to make sure that I sort of function well with the other members of the group and we're all at about a similar level, and that this will sort of, the teamwork element is going to work. Using or looking out for magic items that can help to sort of even that out, I think is doesn't mean you're like serving the optimization needs. It's just a neat, like, a way to use the game to your advantage.
Yeah, I
I
love
love
the
this
idea
because
of
I had
like
Amy
calling it
Vorpal on
patching
here
it.
on. Sorry.
I love you calling it patching it.
Well,
It's
I think
perfect.
I might be borrowing that for the article as well, but I love the idea. And it was great because we had Amy Vorpal on Tuesday, and she was just like, she obviously, I've played with her, Amy, and she makes incredibly fun, wild choices. But she was talking very much about building wizards and building spellcasters and being like, I really like to be just brutally effective. And it's like
Nice.
those are both valid. And truthfully, like when you're mixing it with the other elements of play, they don't always even look that different, you know? But you can
Right.
sometimes arrive at that point via different, like, here's what I did first, and here's how I followed it up. And I like
Yeah.
talking through
I
that stuff. So thanks.
I like to be surprisingly effective at times. I like to be useless in almost every area until my thing comes up and being like, "Wait, I got this." Just eliminating any faith that anyone could have in my character until it's one shining moment of usefulness,
Well,
where it's just
essentially,
like,
that's
"Oh,
like
but I did only take fire spells. I'm so sorry. Exclusively fire."
but it's a way of building in potentially really fun story possibilities because you can cause your character to be underestimated by the game world at large. Which, especially if you sort of recruit your DM as a co-conspirator on that one, like they can play to in some really fun ways, which is again super fun. All right, we're about halfway through the list, I think. Um,
All right. I see on here the next
let's
one is moonsicle.
The moonsicle's very cool. So the moonsicle's a unique weapon offered in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I would love to know once we're through the description what you would want this to look like because I always get fascinated by the ones that we don't
Ooh.
necessarily have a lot of art existing for. But okay, your moonsicle grants a moonsicle sounds like a bicycle when I say it incautiously. So now please ride your
I'm
moonsicle
getting
into battle.
popsicle.
It grants a bonus to attack rolls, damage rolls, and the saving throw DCs of your druid and ranger spells. And that bonus is dependent on the rarity. So there's an uncommon, rare, and very rare form of this one at a +1, +2, +3. And you can use it as your spell casting focus, which is a very fun potential thing to build around. And it also buffs your healing spells. So there's a lot going on with the moonsicle. What do you think of it, and what would it look like?
It's extremely effective. This is really just the like make me strong kind of item on this list where it's just like help, and it really does in so many ways. I think to me it would be really cool if it was like made of this kind of like almost tree-shaped natural piece of wood, and then it had moonstones just kind of like haphazardly shoved into like crevices of it that seem to kind of draw power from,
So
as if it's
gems in
kind
the
of like
place of where
hand
knots in the
forged.
wood. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, as if kind of like this druid in the wood has just been like forging this thing and shoving pieces of moonstone they've found into it to focus their energy through.
I love that.
I think it'd be
And of
pretty.
course,
It'd
it's
sparkle.
also literally a weapon, so it does a lot of things for you. Um, but I love your mention of special materials. Also draws us to one of the other classic things on this list that I love. Made this list the dragon scale mail. Because druids
Yeah.
don't like metal armor.
We sure don't. And sometimes I really wish we did. Sometimes it really hurts that we don't do like the metal. Ouch. But the dragon scale mail is cool looking. That's
It
one
is.
huge perk, is it is inherently awesome.
I love also that the dragon scale mail canonically could have been made from the hide of a dragon who is deceased, but also could be sort of donated by a dragon who has sort of like not quite sloughed off, but like discarded in some way their scales or skin for that purpose, which I think would really help. Like, depending on your particular druid, either version of that might be a good fit for you. Not that you get to necessarily design your own magic items, but I'm just saying, like, in conspiring with your DM, should that ever come up, or designing someone who has this. Uh, of course, what we're referencing here is that druids not being able to wear metal armor really limits your ability to buff your AC. But it has the basic qualities of medium armor scale mail, except you can actually use it, and it's got a bonus of an additional +1 to AC and some resistances based on the type of dragon whose scales you've donned, and some cool like ability to find dragons. So that's just exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the ability too of like being able to go in either direction, like you said, of either being someone who's like the slayer of dragons and that's their past, or full how to train your dragon. Absolutely. Just I'm friends with dragons. They donated this to me. I represent my dragon friends.
Yeah. It'd be fun
So
to sort of
cute.
combine the claw insignia with this one in some way, where like the maybe it's a dragon's talons is your insignia of the claw, and that's like on your scale mail, and it comes with that. I don't know. You won't be wearing the mail
I
when you're
love
wild
it.
shaped, so not sure how much good that does, but I still like the idea.
For me, wild
Mhm.
shaping, I would say 85% of the time is for story or for like out of combat functionality, like flying and like being big enough to give someone like a ride or something. And very rarely something that is like super combat focused for me. It's like, oh, if
Hmm.
I'm getting hurt in combat, that's my backup. But I'm first to going spells and saving my wild shapes in just kind of fun or useful ways outside of fighting.
That's
So the armor
very
will be
cool.
helpful then. I like the armor.
Yeah. Which I think is going to make some of these other items extra helpful. I have never played with a rod of absorption. This is number 7 on the list. Um, but this is incredibly cool. The rod of absorption, which is very rare, uh, the actual term, not just me saying that. Uh,
Yeah.
you can spend a reaction to absorb the magical energy of a spell that is targeting only you, and you can simultaneously improve the staying power of your druid and set up the magic item's second ability, which is to re-discharge that energy in the form of getting some spell slot access. This is cool
That
as heck.
is no DM has ever been this nice to me. No way. It's so good. It's
I love that
so
it's very
good, and
sort of
I've never had anything that
science.
nice.
Yeah, it's a almost science fictionally to me. I guess like this is where I like the comic book fan in me shows up, where I'm just like, ah, yes, absorb and redirect powers, a la Bishop of the X-Men. But it's such a cool concept. I love that it can like it has a limited, it does 50 over time, and then it burns out essentially. But in the meantime, you can like store and redirect in a really cool and unique way that I would not have necessarily spotted as being particularly well suited for druids. But I love that it's on this list because recharging up that magic when you need it is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious, I don't actually know. I wonder if there's any ability in this where you could, potentially restore wild shape slots instead of a spell slot. I would be curious if a GM would ever allow that, because that's really interesting as well, specifically.
That could be a really fun, like homebrew version of this one if it's not rules as written, because it sort of they determine the like the level of the spell that you deactivate is what determines how many of its internal charges get
Yeah.
filled up and how much you can use to cast. But you could, I think, flavor that to sort of be like, here's the challenge rating level of the thing you can wild shape into based on how many charges you use up on this staff. I don't know.
Just say please. Mostly that's my hope for it. I think this is really cool and really interesting. I definitely am picturing also the idea of like Avatar: The Last Airbender style redirecting lightning. And I think that that's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. That could also save your life because getting targeted by spells can be a very ouchy situation. So even before the charging up of it. Um, so just a few things left on the list, all very, very cool. We've got the Sentinel Shield, which is in the Dungeon Master's Guide and just gives you a little buff in the terms of advantage on initiative rolls and wisdom checks, which you are already probably a little bit good at as a druid. And I love shout out to Mike for the suggestion of just like, and when combat starts, you'll be more likely to act first. Spike growth, anyone? Like he's serving it at a party. Hmm? Let's get that battlefield ready before anybody else gets to do anything and be like, not so fast.
I
Good
love
luck with
that.
that terrain.
Yeah, I think that that's really awesome. Sentinel Shield is, something that's like, I feel like we came up to like impossible at Rod of Absorption, then it was like, okay, here's something that's like a little more attainable and like likely that your GM will let you have. I think that that's really fun and functional. Yeah, as you said, you should be pretty good at wisdom, but like you can't control the dice quite simply. You can have as high of a modifier as you want, and if you roll a 2, sucks to suck quite simply. So I will take advantage at any given time, especially at the things I'm supposed to be good at. Less time for me
I
to
love
embarrass
that.
myself.
Although sometimes those are the best moments. You just, you want them to land when it's funny and not when it just breaks your
Right.
heart. Or when you're
Exactly.
like, we really need this information, so I hope this roll goes well. Uh, let's see. Finally, on this list, we haven't talked. We've got talked about most of this, but I think that
Mhm.
brings us down to number 10, a good old staff of healing, which there
Yes.
are builds of druids that are particularly well inclined for doing a lot of healing, and this
Mhm.
will just free up your resources and look very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool looking. I love the art that they have along with this one. I feel like a lot of the time I consider the druid in the party in like an ideal party setting is like the backup healer. Your
Mm.
healer is incapacitated, your healer is out of spell slots, your healer has been separated from the party in some capacity. I always would like my druid to have at least a few healing spells as to be the backup for that. Or sometimes nobody else plays a healer and you didn't want to be a cleric. That's the base of it. You're like, well, I want to be able to do something weird and heal people. And I think this is a really good balance. They mention in here, of course, the Circle of Dreams and the Circle of the Shepherd. Circle of the Shepherd is one of the few circles that I actually haven't played as a druid. I've never played a shepherd. I think I've hit pretty much every other circle at this point. I think that would be really interesting. That might be a nice next place to go. Is really leaning into the healing aspects of a druid, and that kind of like idea of healing from nature is a cool flavor for it as well. I want it to be old. I want this druid to be so old carrying this staff. I've got the visual of like the absolutely hunched over holding the staff druid that's been in the woods for like an absolutely indescribable amount of years and has like healing magic that nobody quite understands.
Oh, I love that. Did they like y- uh, in if we're just none of what I say is canon, but
Hypothesizing.
does our impossibly aged, and I've been living in the woods for years, druid who
Uh-huh.
comes in with their staff of healing, like, did we add the carvings ourselves on the staff?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It
100%, I think so.
I would love
And,
that
like,
very
that
much
head
like
on
that.
the top of it,
Mhm,
mystery.
mhm. Who is it? What does it represent? Is it a whole series of, like, past heroes and people that we know? Is it telling the story of, like, our life so far in some way that we're like, "We'll never tell you our secrets, but we're carrying them around with us as we go?" I who's to say?
The staff is like Maui's tattoos in Moana. It's just the life story of this druid in the woods and all of
But
the, like, weird people they've encountered and wanted to remember, but they're getting too old to remember them.
I think that's full of intriguing possibilities, obviously borrowing from some real world traditions, but with
Mhm.
fantasy flair in this case. Um,
Absolutely.
so this has been our trip through the shopping, both the very fancy high end items and the useful everyday ready to wear of druid magic items. Any final thoughts on approaching picking out good stuff for your druid, or maybe more importantly, as a DM, making sure to lace your story with some cool stuff for the druid to find if that's the way you play?
Yeah, I would say that, I think that what you mentioned in the article mentions about, having the opportunity to patch in that is a cool thing that you can do as your GM, especially if somebody is new to it. Druid is one of the harder classes to play off the bat. It's a little more complicated than having somebody start as a fighter or even as, like, a barbarian or something of the sort. So having the ability to kind of look at where your player might be struggling or where there might be pain points for them that they wanna be succeeding and they're not, is a great opportunity to fill something in with a magical item to let them feel like they're succeeding again, whether it gives them advantage at wisdom or it makes them just get knocked down a little less. If you just see them absolutely exhausted of making death saves, I think there's a cool opportunity to like boost your player's confidence and giving them a magical item that will help with that. Or helping them find a new purpose if they're seeming a little lost in what their kind of place is in the party, because Druid is so flexible. It can be kind of anything. It can be really focused on DPS. It can be really focused on like utility. It can be really focused on healing. And you can kind of guide that through a magical item.
Yeah. So please treat this as an opportunity for planting cool stuff in your party. If you are a player and if you are making a character who's allowed to have magic items, go wild on this shopping list. I noticed one of our community members was noting in the comments on the article that like Do not necessarily bug your DM for a specific item all the time because that's,
Mhm.
might change the balance at your table. But if your DM is like, please pick some magic items, this is the list for you. And I would love to hear about anybody who has played around with these, or like these are your go-tos, or if you, what would you do with your staff of the woodlands for taking cat naps in and or destroying buildings? I'm just fascinated by the possibilities. I can't stop
Yeah.
picturing just trees out of nowhere. So please let us know about that in the chat, in the comments. And where can people find you, Saige?
Yeah, I'm everywhere on the internet at Not Sage. I'm a streamer on my channel. I mostly play games and chat with the community. I play a whole lot of D&D on the internet. I am behind the Pixel Circus channel. Pixel Circus is a community of independent creators that just decided that we wanted to make something different and make something that we wished existed. On Friday nights, we have Failed Save, which is a comedy chaos D&D 5e that Amy has been on, actually. Plays
Very
the lovely
fun.
Cat Cavalier. And then on Saturdays, we have Damsels, Dice, and Everything Nice, our Disney Princess D&D show. You can also find me actually this afternoon, if you're watching on Thursday, on the Black Dice Society at 4 p.m. Pacific on the D&D channel. And I'm on Smosh Games all the dang time. We even played our first TTRPG for realsies in person with Abria Iyengar recently. And Abria, of course, is an icon and ran an amazing game.
That's
So Oliver,
fantastic.
too much.
Thank you so much for coming to join us. If you like this, please expect more shopping episodes because it makes me laugh to say that about these, even though it's really just a
I
guide to
love
best
it.
magic items. But I like thinking of it as I like put them all in my cart. Let's go. Hmm?
Oh, 100%.
I
I'm going and editing a couple of character sheets. Only
I
a
have been
pre-built for
Amy
future
Dallen,
games.
and we will
Sorry.
see you next time on D&D Beyond.
It's D&D.